Have you ever wondered what games you should keep or you should lose? Find out here at Purge Reviews. Have you ever wondered what games you should sell or you should use? Find out here at Purge Reviews. Find out on our top 10 list what games you cannot miss. Don't forget to subscribe to Purge Reviews.
I have to admit I like deduction games. They don't always work for me, but I always kind of give them a little bit of a pass because I like the deduction nature. I think growing up, had I played Clue, it would have been one of my favorite games. I just never played it. My family didn't play board games. I would only play with other kids, and to be honest, it was Monopoly, Hero Quest, and the Dukes of Hazzard board game that came out a lot, but board games was not a big part of my life growing up. But I feel like Clue would have been one of my favorites. I really like deduction games, and there's some really good two-player deduction games, like the Mr. Jack series, for example, and the Phantom of the Opera game. But you don't see a whole lot of great deduction games for multiple players, other than social deduction games. So I was really intrigued by P.I. by Martin Wallace. It was a deduction game for multiple players, and it had Martin Wallace on it, who is a very great game designer. So it was a game that piqued my interest. I started looking around, and it looked like it may have had a little bit more luck than most people would want. And perhaps it does, but it doesn't detract from the game from me. Instead, what I found in P.I. was a really good deduction game. Now, it's lighter, which is great because you can kind of chat and talk about other things while you're playing it. But at some point, you kind of need to think about what's going on and kind of reducing what happens. Now, the investigator tokens you only have 5. For the entire 3 cases that you'll have, so you need to use them sparingly. They can give you an awful lot of information, but everybody has them at their disposal. And sometimes it can really help you deduce what you're trying to look for. Nevertheless, I really like this game. I played with a couple different player counts, and it worked brilliantly. I like that you're utilizing other people's turns because you're giving them the information. The game worked really well 3 players, because you're almost involved in every turn, but there's enough of a breathing room for you not to be on every turn. So it gave you like a little bit of downtime, but it was a perfect amount of downtime with 3 players, and just a little bit more with 4. I think when you're going more than that, you're pushing a little bit. Now, this is one of those games where the other player giving you information cannot make any mistakes. If they make a mistake, then it can ruin the whole game for you. But the rules do cover that. They say if somebody makes a mistake, they get 0 and you get your full 7 points. So there is that. But I think that if somebody's paying attention, it'd be pretty hard to make a mistake. And they really need to look at what's going on. One thing I would say, too, is that when people are looking around to see if the place you have, is you should try not to follow their eyes. Because they're going to be looking where your suspect or crime or location is. So, as a courtesy or gentleman's agreement, if you will, is to keep people from looking at people's eyeballs and watching where they're going. The game will just be more enjoyable that way. Otherwise, I found this to be a very, very good and very, very fun deduction game. It's light, but it's the same thing. You still have to narrow things down, and where you're placing and what you're guessing can do that. Now, sometimes you get screwed by the 9 investigation cards that are out, and I'll show you that when we go through the flow. But if one doesn't come out that you really need, you're kind of stuck. You might have to burn an investigation token to do that, and that's kind of a bummer. Sometimes you just don't get the clues that you need, and that can really hamstrung you. So there's a little bit of luck in that, but that is so small. Sometimes you'll just burn something to get more cards out or get a little bit of information, even though it doesn't really help you very much, but it might take the card away from somebody else, right? So I really like this game. I highly recommend it. If you're looking for a multiple player deduction game, this is probably it. This is probably my favorite. It's not a social deduction. It's a solving a crime deduction game on the mat, and I really like that. I find those to be very, very rare, and it does have the potential to have too much note taking and too much to kind of juggle at one time, you don't have this problem with this game. Everything you need is on the board. You don't need to take notes at all, which is great. And it keeps it very simplistic, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and recommend this. If you're looking for a deduction game to try this one out, if you need a multiplayer deduction game, buy this one. This one is really, really good, and I'd highly recommend PI. Let's take a look at the components for PI. I think the artwork on here is just phenomenal. You're going to get a rule book and a few different languages. Rules are pretty Martin Wallace standard. We're going to have the list of what you're going to do and a lot of good pictures in here. The rule book is really good for this game. You're going to get a really neat little rule book or game board. And it's very, very beautiful. And it has, I think, movie references on it. So obviously here's Casablanca. I think this is The Godfather. So I think all these places are movie references. The waterfront from the Marlon Brando movie. So I think that's what is going on here. Here's Skid Row, Chinatown. I think that's what's going on here. Very easy to use board. Now these containers are ones that I've added. Everybody's going to get an investigator token, which is cardboard, in their color, the case that they're doing, and you get some cubes and a cylinder. So every player is going to get that. In addition, you're going to get a number of these cardboard chits that will be used. They're very thick and very nice. And then you will get a simple deck of cards, which will have the artwork from the different locations, people, and different jobs. There's Ocean Drive. Here's Union Square. Bubbles. You'll be using these in the game. So all the components are simple. You played Martin Wallace games. There's kind of the same thing you always see in Martin Wallace games, but very good. The rules for PI are very clear. There's only a couple things you can do on a turn. You can play your investigation token, you can play one of the investigation cards or clue cards, or you can try to solve the case. And it keeps things very, very simple. The rules were exceptionally clear on what you should do, and a great job, as most Martin Wallace rule books are. So let me show you how this game is played. There's a location, crime, and suspect. Everybody is trying to solve. There'll be 3 rounds of the game, so there'll be 3 cases you have. And everybody's going to draw their own set of location, crime, and suspect. The person to the right will have what you're trying to solve. In this case, I'm trying to solve Doc in Little Italy, and he performed a jewelry heist. So let's just go with that and say that's what I'm trying to solve here. When you're setting the game up, you're going to have a bunch of these tiles that will match up all the cards that are going to be in the game. So you're going to put a suspect on each place, and you're going to put a crime on each place. And you'll do that to set the board up. So these will be randomized throughout the game. Some of these will have no crime and no suspect. So on your turn, you can do one of 3 actions. The first thing I can do is I can put my investigator token. You're going to get 5 of these. There's 3 cases, and once you use it, they're out for all 3 cases. You're going to have only 5 of these for 3 cases. And let's say I stick it here on Central Station, for example. So let's take a look at the board here, keeping in mind that I don't know this, but I'm trying to solve Doc, Little Italy, and Jewelry Heist. So for my investigator here, the player to my right would say, put a cylinder on it, because one of mine is here, which is the jewelry heist, and I don't have that information. And then she would say, she would put a cube on it, because she would say, well, one of mine is adjacent to this location. It's Doc, I just don't know it yet. And Little Italy is also adjacent to it, so she would put another cube on it. Cube means it's adjacent, cylinder means it's right here. Also, there's going to be these backed cards, the PI cards. There'll be 9 of these face up, and I can choose any of them. If I was to choose Doc, then what she would do, she would take the cylinder and put it on Doc, because I guessed correctly. Okay? Now, if she had picked the card that said Pinky, she would have put a cube on Pinky, because now it's adjacent to Doc. So I would have known that it's adjacent to this and also adjacent to Pinky. And that kind of narrows down what I'm doing. So you're going to have 9 of these cards that are face up that you can pick at any time to kind of reduce it down. The third thing you do is you can choose to solve it. So let's say that I chose Pinky and Little Italy and Joy Heist. I would be wrong. So what I would do is I would take one of my penalty bonuses down here that's normally on 0, and it would go down here to -2. So at the end of the game I have -2. So every miss I have, I add to my bonus at a maximum of -10. If I was to guess correctly, and I was the first person to do it, I would get 7 points. So I would get 7 points if I had done it in a round after that, 5 or 3. And at the end of the game, just add up your points. So 3 things you can do is 1, put one of your investigator tokens down, which they will tell you if it's somebody where you're at or adjacent. I can pick one of the PI cards, and they would tell me if it's the correct person or adjacent to it, or I can try to solve the crime. Very easy to do. Who should buy this game? Anybody looking for a PI-themed game. This is one of the best I've seen. Anybody looking for a multiple-player deduction game. This is one of the best ones I've ever played, and I highly recommend it. If you're just looking for a light game, or maybe even like a filler-esque game to play with people, the rules do require you to go through 3 cases, but you could just easily play 1. I think the reason why you go through 3, because it kind of normalizes the luck that might be in this game. So, you know, if you got a lucky draw, then maybe over 3 it wouldn't be so. But I had a fantastic time with this game, and I highly recommend it. If you're looking for a multiple player deduction game, buy this one on site. PI is a definite keeper.